Welcome to another episode of Bargain Saturdays, and I'll have to admit I actually watched this back when this first came out, so I watched this one a couple months ago, which doesn't mean I've completely forgotten how the movie itself went. I mean, it might be a bit rusty in the mind a bit, but, I remember the main plot points and my main thoughts about the movie from back then. I actually thought this one was a step up from a lot of the previous DragonHearts we've been getting lately. Though I suppose that wasn't a particularly hard line to cross. Usually as you advance through a series, the movies tend to get worse and worse and worse. I mean, it's rather unusual for a sequel to, be better than the original. I mean, I've seen it happen, with Equestria Girls. The second movie was definitely far superior to the first movie. Spider-Man 2 is probably another solid example. And depending on your feelings about, you could argue maybe Tremors 2 slightly better because it has a more comedic feel to it, if you're less into the horror movie genre, sort of like how I'm not particularly fond of it, so having a good old time, until all of a sudden the tables turn on you is kind of a nice touch, I suppose. But yeah, DragonHeart Vengeance has a lot of the usual staples you'd expect for a DragonHeart movie with a female dragon, in this case Sivith, sharing her heart with a young boy named Darius, who ends up becoming sort of a swashbuckling mercenary, who also has the ability to talk to animals because he has the heart of a female dragon inside of him. Yeah, female dragons have slightly different powers, like they can transform into various animals. You know how Draco in the first movie hides himself as a giant rock? Sivith can hide herself as like a rat or a cat or a dog or a horse, whatever she kind of needs at the time. Which is definitely an interesting ability, though it does beg the question, where does all of her mass go? Though I suppose that'd be like asking what happens to everyone's mass in Animorphs, or how do they gain mass? To transform to heavier animals like grizzly bears or stuff like that. At a certain point, you just have to assume it just works because, reasons we don't want to get into because they're too complicated or would just mess with the lore more than you need to know. It's sort of like trying to understand how the immortals are immortal in Highlander. As soon as you get an explanation, you're like, lame. So you're better off, probably not knowing how Sivith can, just shed hundreds, if not potentially more than 1,000-some pounds of weight, by just using magic power. It's just magic. You don't need to know more. This isn't D&D. But yeah, they do a lot better job structuring the plot to reveal how the king's been paying off mercenaries to murder his own people, both to try and trigger a war with a nearby rival he wants to take over, as well as to get rid of his peasants that are complaining about how they're starving because he hasn't been storing grain for years to prepare for a bad harvest. So yeah, he's a rather irresponsible king. Thankfully, Sivith's been storing up grain, but she's not exactly going to give it to the king that banished her because she wouldn't share her heart because she'd given it to Darius beforehand. Because the king, being a douche, ran Darius' family off the road and straight up killed his parents and left him for dead. Because the king's like, I'm so important, I'm not going to even ask people to move over for me, I'm just going to run them off the road. Even while I'm supposedly laying here dying because he had faked his injury. This isn't to say it probably wasn't somewhat severe, but he'd upped how badly he was injured so he could banish Sivith if she wouldn't do what he wanted. So yeah, the story basically sets up, with a bunch of people wanting vengeance, with, Lucas wanting revenge on the mercenaries for murdering his family, Darius wanting revenge on the king when Sivith finally tells him what actually happened. And, obviously Sivith wants revenge on the king for banishing her, because she knows what he did. Especially when she finds out about how he's been, causing wars on purpose, to try and expand the kingdom. That really gets in her craw. Though it's a bit weird watching a dragon that's usually more obsessed with peace, at one point in the movie getting so pissed off at a mercenary for trying to murder Lucas because she was under her protection that she literally loses all sense of reason, bites her head off, and just chucks her corpse into a river. Even when the mercenary was surrendering, offering to reveal everything to the peasantry about what the king's been doing. She's just like, I'm so far gone, I don't care, I'm just that pissed off, you're gonna die. Thankfully, there's another mercenary at another point in the movie that lost an arm in a fight that got away, so they actually do find evidence they need to solve all the problems. But yeah, I guess it was a reminder that, being obsessed with revenge can kind of screw you over in the long run, if you're not careful. So I guess it's nice everything worked out in the end, but it definitely could have had a darker end and twist where everything falls apart and the king wins. But you can't have that in a DragonHeart movie. They're meant to be a lot more lighthearted usually, right? Until next time, then. See ya.